people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. In my previous video, we talked about Mary Spencer's call-out of her compatriot and countrywoman reigning IBF champion, Marie-Eve Decare. She would like to get Marie in the ring. No telling if she will or won't in her very next fight, though if she were to, if the two were to share the squared circle, what would a fight like that look like? Well, Mary Spencer's an orthodox fighter, and Marie-Eve Decare is a southpaw. Mary Spencer's base style seems to live somewhere between the boxer-puncher and the pressure fighter. Somewhere in between there, she seems to have the characteristics of both at times. She's fundamentally sound and educated the way a boxer-puncher is, but she can throw punches in bunches and crowd the other girl, crowd her opponent, the way a pressure fighter would, sporting a professional record of 7 wins, no losses, no draws, with 5 knockouts. Her base style lives somewhere between the boxer-puncher and the pressure fighter, whereas Marie's a pure boxer, sporting a professional record of 18 wins, 1 loss, no draws, with 1 knockout, just 1 knockout. Marie-Eve Decare has never been stopped in 19 professional contests, 19 professional bouts. And she is your, according to Hoyle, textbook pure boxer. Stick and move outside jabber, fighting on the fly, gliding around the ring, and maintaining a certain level of distance between herself and her opponent. She's a defensive fighter, a defensively minded fighter. Not much of a puncher, and not really big on power. Not all that good mid-range to inside, in the pocket, deep in the pocket. The edge and experience would have to go to Marie-Eve Decare. She's got a lot more pro fights than Mary does. Faced better caliber of fighter, better quality of competition than Mary Spencer has so far. She beat Chris Namis for the IBF, beat a former champion in Michaela Lauren. She lost the IBF title to Clarissa Shields, and eventually Clarissa dropped the title, at which point Marie-Eve Decare was able to win it back when it was vacant. Marie-Eve Decare, who's 36 years old, a very spry 36 years old. She's just 1 year younger than Mary Spencer. Marie-Eve Decare hasn't seen action at all this year. She was last in action in December of last year, and who knows if she's going to get back out there before this year is out. But she needs to, because she is allowing ring rust to collect. The edge and experience definitely would have to go to Marie-Eve Decare, the edge and professional experience. But the edge in size, speed, and power would have to go to Mary Spencer. Mary Spencer has a lot of size on Marie-Eve Decare, physically imposing and having all the punching power that Marie-Eve Decare doesn't exhibit. Marie-Eve Decare doesn't have. In a situation like that, where you've got a defensive fighter that's likely going to be moving lateral, giving up ground to an aggressive opponent, the danger is that you might get outworked, because even if you can buy yourself time by using the ring and moving around, unless you're landing meaningful shots and meaningful punches, counter punches, and walking that oncoming opponent into shots, into punches, unless you're doing that, to the eyes of the judges, it's just going to look like you're running away. In the eyes of the judges, it's going to look like Marie's getting outworked. You know, Mary Spencer debuted as a professional in August of last year. She fought 2 times last year, 5 times this year. That activity level, that's what you want to see in the first couple of years of a professional fighter's career. They need to get out there often, get those rounds in the bank, and get that experience. The way that Mary Spencer is plowing through these girls, plowing through these opponents, having stopped 5 of the 7. She's sharp, and she'd actually be much sharper than Marie-Eve Decare, who hasn't boxed at all this year if they were to go straight into a fight with each other. Marie hasn't boxed at all in the year of 2022. Look, the way I see it, Marie-Eve Decare is an educated, pure boxer, but she's not big on power, so I don't get the sense she can hurt Mary Spencer, and I don't get the sense she can keep her off. Mary Spencer's the more prolific puncher, the busier puncher. Mary Spencer is the more powerful puncher of the two. a bigger puncher, and she's the bigger woman overall. Physically imposing, very physically imposing for a junior middleweight. And I don't get the sense that Marie-Eve Decare can shake and bake her and keep her off of her all night. She doesn't have the power or the work rate to keep Mary Spencer off of her. She just doesn't have it. Marie-Eve Decare's best punches are her straight punches. She's actually quite vulnerable mid-range to inside, deep in the pocket, and I don't think she'd want to be mid-range to inside with Mary Spencer, as Mary would have the edge there. Mary's got some fast hands mid-range to inside, whereas Marie-Eve Decare is an outside fighter, an outside jabber. Marie-Eve Decare would look to fight the majority of this fight on the balls of her feet, fight on the fly, and eventually I feel Mary Spencer would catch up to her. It would only be a matter of time. Marie-Eve Decare might be able to buy herself time and go more rounds than Chris Namis or Cynthia Lozano did. Yeah, she might last a few more rounds than they did, but it would end the same way. I go with Mary Spencer to eventually catch up to Marie-Eve Decare, put her down, and put her out. Marie-Eve Decare just ain't got the firepower to keep off such a physically imposing, hard-punching, aggressive opponent. She just ain't got it for this fight. That's a big part of the reason I'm not sure if it happens. It's a high-risk, low-reward fight for Marie-Eve Decare. I don't think Mary Spencer has any leverage in the situation to actually get Marie-Eve Decare in the ring. She's not a mandatory challenger, and she seems to be going both the WBA and WBC routes, but not the IBF. Even though she's calling Marie-Eve Decare out, she's not actually her mandatory challenger or anything of the sort. So Marie-Eve Decare has the luxury of ignoring these call-outs and not fighting Mary Spencer, though very soon, Mary Spencer's going to make her presence felt. Sooner or later, she's going to get one of these champions in the ring. Somebody is going to have to deal with her or forfeit their title. That's the situation. Men's lightweight news. Veteran trainer Robert Garcia says, "I think Pitbull Cruz could beat Devin Haney." The veteran trainer was quoted as saying, "I think so, I think so. I don't think he can hold him back with his power. I don't think he's got that crazy power to hold him back, so I think Pitbull Cruz could beat Haney." This is a very similar dynamic to the dynamic we just discussed when it comes to Marie-Eve Decare and Mary Spencer. Similar in the sense that Devin Haney, the champion, is a pure boxer, an economic stick-and-move, outside jabber, outside fighter. An outside fighter who's not big on power, and he's not a prolific puncher. Yeah, he's not a pressure guy, you can see that. The pressure guy here is Isaac Cruz. And stylistically, pressure fighters have a stylistic advantage over pure boxers because they're constantly crowding them. Constantly, they force the pure boxer to fight. Think Jarrett Hurd versus Erslan De Lara, Brian Castano versus Erslan De Lara. To the eye, the pure boxer will appear a lot more fundamentally sound and cerebral than the pressure fighter. The pressure fighter is often viewed as crude and limited. Straightforward up and down with no bells and whistles. But when you put that pressure fighter in the same ring with that pure boxer, it becomes immediately apparent that pressure fighters have a tendency to make pure boxers uncomfortable. Because a pure boxer is trying to fight a more controlled kind of fight, whereas a pressure fighter, they want to let the fists fly. With reckless abandon, take chances in order to land big punches, big shots. Pitbull's like a street fighter. He takes a really good punch, he's very strong, and he's so aggressive. He throws punches from everywhere. It's going to be hard for Devin Haney to hold him back. It's going to be a tough 12 rounds for Devin. We've seen this kind of matchup many times in the past, and every single time, the pressure fighter can make the pure boxer quite uncomfortable. In some instances, he can beat the pure boxer. Yeah, in some instances, the pressure fighter can. It all depends on the level at which the fighters compete. A B-level pressure fighter can still give an A-level pure boxer a lot of problems, but because that pure boxer is an A-level pure boxer, he can find a way to win. Find a way against that B-level pressure fighter, but if the pressure fighter's an A-level pressure fighter, it doesn't even have to be an A-level pressure fighter, but so long as that pressure fighter is competing at the same level as that pure boxer, there's a chance he upsets the apple cart for that pure boxer. That's saying that a C-level pressure fighter can beat a C-level pure boxer, a B-level pure boxer, or an A-level pure boxer, so long as they're competing at the same level. The question is Isaac Cruz actually competing at the same level as Devin Haney? His claim to fame seems to be a fight that he lost against Gervonta Davis, a boxer-puncher. Boxer-punchers have a stylistic advantage over pressure fighters because they can alternate. Box when they need to, punch when they need to. They're not quite as defensively minded as a pure boxer. A pure boxer against the pressure fighter is under grave threat of being outworked and, in some instances, stopped.
Yeah, that can happen.
Think David Lemieux versus Hassan Endam. David Lemieux being the pressure fighter and Hassan Endam being the pure boxer, the stick and move outside jabber who wants to spend the majority of the fight on the move, on the balls of his feet. He's not a puncher in all the ways that David was a puncher. And you see how that turned out. You see what happened. David stopped him. David knocked him out.
Would that happen to Devin if he fought Isaac?
Well, like I said, that depends. That depends on the level at which they compete. Isaac Cruz's claim to fame isn't even a fight that he won. It's a fight that he lost against Gervonta Davis. And he showed some good qualities in that fight. Good chin, good punching power.
Very good gas tank. He comes from Mexico City. That's high altitude. Any fighter that hails from high altitude likely has a good gas tank.
And Isaac's got that, but don't forget that his claim to fame isn't a fight that he won, it's a fight that he lost. What is Isaac Cruz's best win? What's the testament to the level at which he competes? When we look at Devin Haney, he's fought against the former champion in Jorge Linares.
Somebody who's actually done something as a lightweight.
He beat Jojo Diaz after Jojo outpointed experienced veteran of the Dominican Republic, Javier Fortuna. More recently, he won a lopsided decision over the then unbeaten Unified Ring Magazine and lineal champion George Kambosos Jr. When we think about Devin Haney and the level at which he competes, he's fought more somebodies than Isaac has. We're not talking about fights where Devin lost, but he showed some good qualities. We're talking about fights that he won. Whereas with Isaac, the only real testament to how good a fighter he is a fight that he lost.
Yeah, he knocked out Yuriorkis Gamboa, looked good doing it, but so did a journeyman in Castellanos.
Knocking out today's Yuriorkis Gamboa, it really doesn't mean much, but I guess because Devin Haney fought that same Yuriorkis Gamboa and didn't knock him out, there's an argument there. There's a debate to be had.
I understand it completely.
But Devin isn't big on power. He couldn't knock out a Chinny Linares. He couldn't knock out a Chinny Gamboa.
So how the hell's he gonna knock out Isaac Cruz? Gervonta Davis couldn't knock out Isaac Cruz.
Then again, Gervonta Davis really hasn't fought any of the somebodies in the lightweight division. Devin has.
Well, at least one or two, more than Gervonta.
Gervonta Davis's exploits as a lightweight are really just limited to a fight with a very chinny Yuriorkis Gamboa, a fight with Isaac Cruz, and a fight with Rolly Romero.
Gamboa was over the hill, and the other two, they didn't beat anybody.
Isaac Cruz, Rolly Romero, they didn't beat nobody. Nobody good at this weight. So if you're Isaac Cruz and your claim to fame is losing to Gervonta Davis, who really hasn't fought any of the upper echelon lightweights.
When your claim to fame is losing to that guy,
and that guy isn't fighting anybody that's on the level, what the hell does you losing doing mean?
that's where the question mark is. It's not like Gervonta Davis went up to lightweight and fought Vasil Lomachenko or Teofimo Lopez.
Not so much as a George Kambosos or a Luke Campbell or Richard Comey.
When your claim to fame is losing a fight to a guy who hasn't beat any of the established lightweights.
When that's your claim to fame, we don't really know at which level you compete because we don't really know at which level he competes. And you lost to him.
I mean, I don't really think that Robert Garcia is off base when he says that Isaac could give Devin a lot of problems. I could see that.
But is he really on the level to where he can beat him?
It's unfortunate because the politics of boxing will prevent such a fight from ever taking place. Devin Haney seems very close to leaving this division anyway.
He's gonna fight George again, then afterwards maybe he fights Vasil Lomachenko, or he moves up, or he fights Vasil Lomachenko and moves up afterwards. I don't get the sense we're gonna see Isaac Cruz versus Devin Haney anyway. It's unfortunate, because it is a very intriguing fight.
The other thing is that Isaac's not gonna cross the street. If he didn't cross over to DAZN for the Ryan Garcia fight,
He's not gonna cross over to Top Rank and ESPN for a Devin Haney fight. I get the sense that they're trying to build him up on their own side of things, and they're going to keep him there.
I don't get the sense we're going to get a Devin Haney versus Isaac Cruz fight.
So we may never know who would have beat who, what the outcome would have been.
Not when his handler Sean Gibbons is saying things like Isaac Cruz is the next face of Mexican boxing.
The next face of Mexican boxing after Canelo Alvarez, Gibbons told BoxingScene.com in an interview. Isaac Cruz is so hot right now, if he does what he's supposed to do with Ramirez, which he did.
He knocked him out in 2 rounds.
On the undercard of Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz.
His it factor will increase.
He's a fighter people are noticing. That's how PBC and Al Heyman build stars. They give fighters fighters like Cruz the biggest and best platforms to fight on. He had his coming out party against Tank. I saw about 15 Hall of Fame NBA players go, oh shit, after the first round. Who's this guy running Gervonta around the ring? This fight against Ramirez will take him to the next level where he's headlining a card himself afterwards.
I mean, that more or less tells you right then and there they're not going to ship him off to somebody else's platform to fight somebody else's star.
Although that won't stop them from name-dropping other fighters that fight under other promotional banners on other platforms. You'll notice that Sean Gibbons said, we're ready to fire up Cruz versus Ryan Garcia. Isaac is not afraid of any fighter. I don't want to disappoint the fans, but this isn't fantasy boxing, putting A against B against C against D. There are certain things that need to happen, like with platforms the guys fight on. We'll fight anybody when the circumstances are right.
Right here and right now, Ryan Garcia is the A-side to Isaac Cruz.
And unless you're going to cross over to DAZN to get him, the fight doesn't happen, because Golden Boy's not going to send Ryan to you.
Not for an Isaac Cruz fight anyway. In that situation, Isaac's the B-side.
A more realistic proposition is yet another fight that Isaac is lobbying for. A rematch with Gervonta Davis. That's more realistic. Post-fight after knocking out Ramirez, he was quoted as saying, we want the rematch with Gervonta Davis. That's what these fans want. I promised the knockout tonight, and we got it done.
He did. And I would sooner expect Isaac to share the ring with Gervonta Davis twice before he shares the ring with Ryan once.
Because he's the B-side to Ryan Garcia. I give two fucks who you think wins a fight between them. I give a fuck about your anecdotes or your annotations. Right now, Ryan Garcia is the A-side to Isaac Cruz, who is the B-side. So if Isaac really wants him, he crosses the street, he gets it done.
This should have been a fairly uncomplicated situation, but Sean Gibbons, Isaac's handler...
Well, you heard what he said. He thinks Isaac's the next face of Mexican boxing behind only Canelo Alvarez. Do you get the sense he's going to ship him off to DAZN to be content for them?
No, he isn't. They'll either put him in a Davis rematch or continue to build his profile.
Maybe they put him in there with that De Los Santos kid that just knocked out Rayo.
Another unbeaten up-and-comer they were grooming over there. Shock upset loss for Rayo. He was a kid that was starting to get some attention, but De Los Santos put a stop to all that.
If they don't put Isaac Cruz in a Gervonta Davis rematch, they'll just continue to put him in other fights on their own side of the street. They're not going to ship him out to DAZN, and they're not going to ship him out to ESPN. So fights like a Ryan Garcia fight or a Devin Haney fight, at least right now, those are non-starters.
Isaac's not the A-side to Ryan, and he's not the A-side to Devin. They're the A-sides to him.
So unless Sean is prepared to ship him out to those other platforms, those fights don't happen.
Because those fighters aren't going to bow to him.